If you're serious about winning with money and getting in control of your finances, then this is probably the most important video you're going to watch this week. We're looking at emergency funds, the most underrated financial asset in your toolkit. Welcome back to Money by Magella, your place for a drink and a think on all things finance, investing, and business. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so that we can become financially free together. We're going to start with why you need an emergency fund. I'm going to challenge you to look at this question in a completely different perspective. Okay, so why do you actually need an emergency fund? And I don't just mean you generally. I mean you, the person watching this video. Why do you need an emergency fund? And I don't just mean objectively, I mean beyond the raw fact that yes, an emergency fund is going to be there to bail you out of random emergencies. For me, it's a psychological peace of mind. It makes me feel like I can take on more risk with my investments, knowing that I have a fail-safe in the bank. I personally really value having that cash security. I see an emergency fund as more than just a practical asset. I see it as an emotional buffer to my investment journey. It's crucial that you work out your own unique why, because it's something that you're going to have to keep coming back to. Once you work it out, or if you've already worked it out, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your why. What is an emergency fund used for? Our what in this video? Everyone seems to classify an emergency differently. And so this part of the video is all about you creating a purpose for your emergency fund that's going to best suit you and the way that you budget. For example, when I first started to build my emergency fund, I was a little bit confused as to what classified an emergency for me. And so I was using my emergency fund for a variety of things. Any dip in income or unexpected bills, my yearly registration for my car. So my emergency fund was getting a pretty good workout, and it began to be an account that I accessed very regularly. And so what was happening was I was constantly using it. I was constantly using up my funds, which meant that I had to keep going back and topping it up. It also meant that it was constantly on my mind. Something that was supposed to be giving me peace of mind was starting to cause me a lot of stress. I couldn't quite meet my goal, the amount that I wanted in my emergency fund, because every time an expense came up, it kept getting lower. And so clearly this strategy wasn't working for me. I had to take a step back and realize that. Why wasn't it working? It was taking too much thought, too much energy every pay period. The whole thing was just becoming a lot more stressful than it needed to be, which is what it's supposed to be avoiding, right? It's supposed to be taking that stress out of your financial life. And that's when I decided that my strategy for my money was going to be as simple and stress-free as possible. I set myself a clear purpose. And this is really what you need to be doing, setting a clear purpose with clear defined boundaries for your emergency fund. Really sit down and analyze your spending habits and your expenses and understand what classifies a true emergency. What I worked out for me personally in my life situation at that time, an emergency would be loss of a job or some other extreme change in my living circumstances. But then the question arose, well, what do I do with my other expenses? And the answer really lies in your budget. It all comes back to setting up a bulletproof good budget. And I'm going to be going through exactly how you can set up a budget in my next video, so be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you need some help with doing this or you just want to review your own. But for now, what you really need to be doing is you need to download the last 3 months of your expenses, go through all of your bank accounts, download that Excel file and label all of your expenses. Go through and label them and figure out where you're spending your money. Figure out the trends. What bills are constantly coming up? What were unexpected? If they were unexpected, could you see them coming up again, or was this truly a one-off? Make sure you account for even your yearly expenses. Things like car rego. That's not an emergency. You know that's coming up. That's a bill. That's not an emergency. Going to the dentist twice a year for a checkup. And then you account for this in your budgeting. So what you can do is you can set up a separate account for your bills. So take the cost of your car rego and divide it by 52. Then figure out how much that car registration is going to cost you per week. Then you know how much you need to be setting aside each and every week or fortnight or month, however often you get paid, and you put that into your bills account. That way, from over the course of the year, you would have saved up enough money to be able to pay that car registration then and there without having to dip into any emergency funds or saving. Really set and forget your emergency fund. That way it will be able to serve its purpose as giving you peace of mind rather than stress because you're constantly having to dip into it. Okay, so now that we've got the why and the what, we can actually get down into the practical tips of how to actually go about doing this. So the first thing you need to do is decide how much you want in your emergency fund. Most people say between 3 to 6 months of living expenses will be sufficient as an emergency fund. But 3 to 6 months can vary quite a lot. I mean, 6 months is double 3 months. So how do you decide for you how much you want in that account? You need to be considering things like how volatile or stable is your income? Are you in a 9-to-5 job that has great job security, or are you like me and my husband where our income is very volatile? It can range month to month. We are both business owners, and so we decided to have 6 months of expenses because there is a risk that our business may fail. The other thing you need to think about is your risk tolerance. Like, how much stress can you handle? Are you more willing to only put aside 3 months and then invest the other 3 months? And that's a complete personal preference. You also want to think about your comfort level. Do you want your 3 to 6 months of living expenses to account for your bare bone expenses, your rent, your food and water, your utilities, your travel, those kinds of things? Or do you want it to cover your lifestyle? Do you want to be in the situation where your income stopped flowing but you can still enjoy a meal out with friends once every 2 weeks? Or, keep your Netflix subscription? Do you want to account for those kinds of things within your emergency fund? Some people are happy to keep it to a bare bone expenses because they know that if an emergency hit, they would drastically reduce their lifestyle anyway. It all comes down to comfort levels and what you'd be happy with. And the last thing you really want to consider is how prone you are to big unforeseen expenses. Do you have any health issues, or do you have an old car that maybe is prone to breaking down every 6 months? And once you've taken all of this into consideration, then you go through your 3 months of expenses with a fine tooth comb. And I know it is not the most fun task, but believe me when I say it is necessary. I seriously avoided doing this for so long. Everyone used to tell me you have to look at your expenses, and I was like, no thanks, don't want to do that. I had too much guilt and it seemed too tedious and complicated, but that's why my budgets always failed, and that's why I could never get an emergency fund up to where it needed to be, because I was not taking into account my spending habits, the way I used my money. And the only way you can know that about yourself is by analyzing the raw data, analyzing your trends, and the way you do that is by tracking your expenses. So let me know if that's something that you also have avoided, and whether you've taken the leap and decided to finally do it. I'd love to hear your stories with that, because that was something I really struggled with. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, give us some love. Every single person that likes the video or comments, it really does make a huge difference, and it makes me so super happy. It really means the world. So if you could just give us a gentle tap of the like button, that would be amazing. But for now, I will see you in the next video. Have a lovely week, and we will chat soon.